biggest takeaway for me in a lot of these reactions is how many journalists think that we would have been so much better off with Kamala Harris okay, here we go. For journalism. Anyway, you'll see Jimmy Kimmel say this. Here we go.
A terrible night last night. It was a terrible night for women, for children, for the hundreds of thousands of hardworking immigrants who make this country go, for healthcare, for our climate, for science, for journalism, for justice, for free speech. It was a terrible night for poor people,
for free speech. I'm sorry. I know I already queued it up by saying this, but yeah, for science, for journalism, for free speech. Bill, I truly I am truly bewildered by this. And I have to say that I see the personal posts of a lot of currently employed journalists right now. And I'm not going to share like screenshots or anything because, well, I want to be able to keep seeing it. And if they find out I'm doing, no, I'm just kidding. It's their personal privacy. So I'm not going to show it. But I'll just say this idea that we protected women's rights, like for my right to be able to tell you that I hate President Trump. Okay. Like all these people that are complaining on the social media platforms get to say what they want. I'm sorry, but like your ability to do that was really hanging in the balance under this last administration. I lived it because that's like I said, that's what my focus has been on this podcast. I really just don't know how these people are coming up with this. Is it because Trump is such a meanie pants towards the press, Bill? Is that where this comes from?
Orange man bad.
But I mean, where do they get this idea that it was a terrible night for free speech when we've been talking about censorship under the Biden-Harris administration for like the last entirety basically of the administration? What exactly are they talking about? I don't understand.
I don't get it either. Here's the problem with the Avengers endorsing Kamala Trump and the P. Diddy party goers that endorse Kamala Harris. I'm sorry. Oh, I've got election brain right now. The problem with all these people endorsing Kamala Harris are people who don't have a friggin' clue. When was the last time they bought their own groceries? You can sit there and say, oh, the economy's great because the stock market's through the roof. What about the 90% of Americans that don't own stock and still have to go pay $2.50 for 6 eggs, or are spending $200 every time they have to go to the grocery store? Okay, that's, no, it doesn't make any sense. And these people, they haven't probably bought their own groceries in decades. Okay, they're so disconnected and they don't have their finger on the pulse. Plus, I will also say this, and I'm glad Allison's got me in one shot here, so if she wants to cut this part out, she can. But I'm going to say it live. You cannot sit there and say this group of people is bad, and they're bad, and they're the problem. They're the cause of all your woes. They're the cause of all your issues, and then wonder why they didn't vote for you. Okay.
We're going to show that clip of Anna Kasparian of the Young Turks actually.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
We'll share that. All right, let's watch the rest of it. But you just saw where he kind of got choked up right when he was talking about immigrants.
This crybaby.
Okay, here we go.
Seniors who rely on Social Security, for our allies in Ukraine, for NATO,
oh, jeez,
the truth and democracy and decency.
Democracy and decency.
What is
Ukraine? He listed like basically, I mean, in one minute clip, he listed like all the reasons that people voted for Trump. I mean, he really did. He listed like all the reasons people voted for Trump by talking about everything that he's so sad about. And that's how clueless so many of these people in the media are. And I keep seeing them posting like, I just don't get it. How did we get here, America? Okay. This sounds terrible, but if you don't know, then it's probably partially because of you.
Hey, Jimmy Kimmel, I got news for you, pal. You've got a net worth of $50 million and an annual salary of $15 million. You send that money to the Ukraine then. I'm trying to live. Okay. I'm trying to pay my bills. I'm trying to feed my family. I'm trying to keep the lights on so we can have tittle tattle. Okay. You send your money to Ukraine.
Okay, let's watch the rest. There's like 10 more seconds.
And it was a terrible night for everyone who voted against him. And guess what? It was a bad night for everyone who voted for him, too. You just don't realize it yet. And most of all, it was an absolute disaster of a night for Melania.
I don't know. I don't get it. All right. Well, anyway, so there you go. That's what Jimmy had to say about it. And yeah, you just don't know it yet either. And that is a very telling part of all of this too, because it really is the attitude, right, Bill, that like we know better than you do. And that's what a lot of journalists think too about the Trump phenomenon. You know, they just feel like it's just a bunch of dumb people. And I saw that in many posts, like just all the ignorant people that are you know, basically just don't know better. And you know, America's just gotten really dumb. And you know what's interesting is that like there are lots of reasons to say why you didn't vote for Trump or like you shouldn't vote for Trump. There are plenty of reasons. But they don't get any of the real reasons. It's just all this like fluff, you know, this fluff anger. And honestly, if they could really nail some of the real reasons, they might make some headway, but unfortunately, they just keep circling the drain on the same talking points that actually make people like him more. Okay, you're probably going to need a drink after watching this. AllisonWinePromo.com. I'll make it short. You're not going to need to drink a whole lot of AllisonWinePromo.com to feel like you're having a good glass of wine, unlike, you know, that terrible wine that only, you know, I don't know what Kamala Harris or Biden, you know, I've been drinking over the last 4 years. It hasn't been anything that's been helping him support free speech, but you will support free speech if you drink my wine. AllisonWinePromo.com. You get 6 bottles of amazing, truly limited edition and fantastic wines. If you're not a wine drinker, you get these 6 bottles every 3 months. If you're not a wine drinker, you will always then have a stock for parties, a birthday present, Christmas is coming up, and you can put a little note on it that says, hey, this helps support free speech. And tell people that they're doing that while they're having their glass of wine. Okay? AllisonWinePromo.com. We already have some great members over there. You will find out all about the wines, which are coming from very limited productions, places where they hand harvest the grapes, places where the grapes are grown between 6,000 and 9,000 feet, extreme altitude, very few pesticides in the areas, and old world winemaking techniques, natural fermentation, no fillers and dyes and stuff that are put in commercial wines. Go sign up, AllisonWinePromo.com. Bill, let me show your choice. My choice was the Jimmy Kimmel clip. I thought that was just really fascinating that, yeah, he believes that. I truly believe he believes that. Okay. So that's, I think, you know, you know, a lot of people think folks are lying. I just don't think so. I think there are probably some people who are lying, but I don't think these people are. Okay. This is Bill's. Here we go.
Feel free to just demonize white people in general, right? Like it turns people off. And if they're constantly told over and over again that they're the enemy, they're everything that's wrong with this country, you know, every bad thing that's happened here is because of, you know, the white European settlers and the white people who are here. Like if one party is telling them they're the bad guys and they're not wanted and they're the root of every problem in the country, do you think that part of the electorate's gonna vote for you?
Boy, I gotta tell you
Now,
guys.
real fast, let me just say something about this, Bill, and then I'm going to let you opine about your clip. When I was talking to a friend about the election 2016, she was very upset because she was a Clinton supporter, well, or just an anti-Trump person. And she was like, we just have to get like white women in suburbia to like get their heads on right. Like, how could white women in suburbia like Trump? And I showed her this article that the New York Times actually had the balls to publish about how actually Trump was the one who was gaining with Hispanics, Black people, and other minorities. And actually, white women in suburbia were the ones that were more and more going for people like Clinton. So actually, the truth is that, yeah, I mean, the message that Anna Kasparian talks about, like the anti-white rural sentiment among the neoliberals, for sure. But actually, like they're growing among people of color. So, you know, Trump grew and gained a lot of foothold in that area, and yet they're still repeating this message of of racism and xenophobia. And it's like, explain to me then my friends who are gay who love Trump. Explain to me my friends who are black. Like, explain to me how I mean, maybe you're going to just say they're idiots and they hate themselves or whatever, and they just don't know what's coming to them, like Jimmy Kimmel thinks.
Mhm.
But one thing that should just be said is that Trump has made gains in those areas, whereas more like self-flagellating white people who hate themselves actually keep voting for people like Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. And so, it's just an interesting phenomenon that does not get brought up very much in the news. Bill, please.
Okay, I want to make something very, very clear. This was never about Trump. And I know there are some people right now who are like clutching their pearls. What did he just say? This was never about Donald Trump. I want to go back on what something Allison just said. Over half of the Latino community in Florida voted for Donald Trump. He had almost 50% of the Latino vote nationwide. Over 20% of the African American vote voted for Donald Trump, but they weren't voting for Donald Trump. Let me explain. Allow me to educate you for just a second. There were 6, 7 different states that actually passed laws protecting abortions. Okay, that's a very left-wing liberal stance. Here in Kentucky, Amendment 2, which was going to put tax dollars towards private schools instead of public schools, which is a very right-wing talking point, got crushed here in Kentucky. I think it was defeated like 70% to 30%, something like that. Okay, it's not about that. It's about voting for the ideals that we hold dear. But on top of that, we just had 4 years of trash. Okay, the pandemic did not help. I agree. But we just had 4 years of garbage. Watching our tax dollars go to Israel, watching our tax dollars go to Ukraine. Okay. And I can't afford to eat, well, not me particularly, but some people, they can't afford to eat. We're seeing millions and millions of tax dollars in Chicago and New York go to people who did not live here 6 months ago. But the people who have lived there and been suffering, they're sitting there thinking to themselves, wait, what the hell? Where did all this money come from all of a sudden? Why couldn't this have been put in our community? It was never about Trump. It was about, it's not about Trump. It's about getting the Democrats out. That's what it came down to.
Somebody a long time ago said something about Trump. I'm sure a lot of people have probably said this, that just like a big middle finger to the sort of status quo, I guess. And
right. To the establishment.
Yeah. And I think, like I said earlier, there are very valid reasons to question if he actually is that, okay? Mm-hmm. Or if he still kind of works in the same circles, but they don't ever go after that. And that's fascinating to me, I think, because if the neo-lib Democrats did that, then they would be pointing the finger back at themselves too. I mean, they can't. It would be like self-convicting, I guess, because they would have to bring up the real reasons why people don't like them. So they go over and over through this just like nonstop rant about these ideas of you're going to lose all your rights in America to be a woman, or this person of this particular skin color, or whatever. All the racism talk and anti-gay people talk, and just, I don't know. And if they were to actually talk about the system itself and the real questions about, like, is Trump who he says he is, then I think you could actually like make some fair points. But they don't do that, because then they would be, like I said, they would be actually pointing a finger back to themselves, and they can't do that. All right. Shout out to Lynn. He was the one who sent me this. I asked for submissions, and my husband sent this. So I would like to hear what you think, Bill. Let me know if you can't hear it. Okay. This is CNN and senior political commentator Scott Jennings talking about the election.
A huge victory. And this is a mandate. He's won the national popular vote for the first time for a Republican, for the first time since 2004. A big deal. This isn't backing into the office. This is a mandate to do what you said you were going to do. Get the economy working again for regular working class Americans, fix immigration, try to get crime under control, try to reduce the chaos in the world. This is a mandate from the American people to do that. I think I'm interpreting the results tonight as the revenge of just the regular old working class American, the anonymous American who has been crushed, insulted, condescended to. They're not garbage. They're not Nazis. They're just regular people who get up and go to work every day and are trying to make a better life for their kids. And they feel like they have been told to shut up when they have complained about the things that are hurting them in their own lives. I also feel like this election, as we sit here and pour over this tonight, is something of an indictment of the political information complex. I mean, we've been sitting around here for the last couple of weeks, and the story that was portrayed was not true. I mean, we were told Puerto Rico was going to change the election. Liz Cheney, Nikki Haley voters, women lying to their husbands. Before that, it was Tim Walz and the camo hats. Night after night after night, we were told all these things and gimmicks were going to somehow push Harris over the line. And we were just ignoring the fundamentals. Inflation, people feeling like that they were barely able to tread water at best. That was the fundamentals of the election. And so I think that both parties should always look at the results of an election and figure out what went right and what went wrong. But I think for all of us who cover elections, talk about elections, and do this on a day-to-day basis, we have to figure out how to understand, talk to, and listen to the half of the country that rose up tonight and said, we've had enough.
I was shocked. This came from CNN. This came from CNN. I thought that was a very cogent, thoughtful monologue there, Bill. What about you?
100%. Everything he said. I don't like the word revenge because it's not revenge for people to exercise their right to vote and have their voice heard. Okay. If you want to look at January 6th as revenge, I could get on board with that. But this is not revenge. This is people putting their foot down saying enough is enough. Okay. I'm tired of not being able to go get and afford the groceries that I need to feed my family. I'm tired of having to pull my daughter or my granddaughter out of school because she can't go to the bathroom because there's somebody in there with a penis. Okay. I'm tired and I'm putting my foot down against, being told that I'm trash and I'm the reason for everybody else's woes in America. It's not revenge to put your foot down and draw a line and say, no, you move. We planted ourselves like a tree by the river of truth and said, no, you move. Okay. Now, when I say we, that's not very fair because I didn't vote for Trump. I would never vote for that guy. And I didn't vote for Harris either. I did vote, but I didn't vote for either one of them. But this was the American public saying, no, we're done. We're tired of it. And we want something different.
One final thought too for me before we do supporters only for a few minutes, and Tittle Tattle is a supporter only show in its entirety. So thank you to everybody who's on the editorial board on Locals and Rockfin and Patreon. And and then also anyone who supports via the mail. I always forget to say this. Send me some mail. P.O. Box 3355, Denellen, Florida 34432. Yeah, I don't think that a lot of the folks in the news business have made much progress in understanding what's going on in the United States. And like I said, if I had seen more journalists say, man, like, I don't like this guy, but I'm just going to vote for Harris because, I don't know, gave like a couple reasons, which like maybe I would disagree with, but it didn't feel like this existential salvation. Now, I'm going to criticize Trump supporters for that too. Thinking that, anybody waiting every 4 years thinking that some, monarchic type leader is going to just change all of your problems. I just don't think that that's the right way to live your life. Mm-hmm. So I just don't think it's the true way to live your life. I think, I don't know. There's just so many, like, for instance, for making choices, like there's so many choices that we make every day. We put very little thought into that might make a big difference. Like I talk about nutrition and farming and stuff quite a bit because I think it's really important. And so like, don't like live with this sense of existential dread about the president. That said, I'm not trying to say the president is an important part of this country, but in a lot of ways I kind of see them as more of a figurehead than I think maybe my old coworkers do, because they really buy into this idea that like, yeah, we're just basically headed towards the 1940s Germany at this point. And I just don't know how they can see the Harris or Biden's legacy as like this salvation, this existential salvation. I just don't get it. But then I also, it's funny to me that both sides were going into the election saying very similar things. Like both sides felt like they were saving the United States. Both sides felt this sense of existential dread. Both sides felt like this was the end forever, if their person didn't make it in. And I think that's really interesting that both sides in all of this felt very similarly leading into it about like just the overwhelming importance of this particular night. But truly, I think in a lot of ways, like since we're talking about the media here and journalism, I do not think they understand the MAGA side. I think they have their own side down pretty well. I just don't think that they understand why it's 8 years later after the guy won his first presidency, and I still just don't see a whole lot of progress on that. Just one last thing before we go to supporters only. If you are somebody who wants to support my free speech fight, I'm suing the state of Washington. The Department of Natural Resources fired me when I interviewed people who had differing opinions about COVID. And in 2021, I refused to stop doing that. So they fired me over my podcast. And so I'm suing. The Silent Majority Foundation is taking my case. This Give, Send, Go is for childcare, for time I'm to take off of the podcast, for traveling back and forth, or deposition and whatnot. If you want to give to the lawsuit expenses that I'll have, it's givesendgo.com/Allison Free Speech Fight.